we all came from the sea. And it is an interesting biological fact that all of us have in our veins the exact same percentage of salt in our blood that exists in the ocean. And therefore, we have salt in our blood, in our sweat, in our tears. We are tied to the ocean. And when we go back to the sea, whether it is to sail or to watch it, we are going back from whence we came.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome along to the 2021 St Martha's Vineyard Seafood Buffet and Auction. Just like before we get going, to explain why we're doing this virtually, we decided this way back in March that actually, to make sure everyone was safe and everything was able to run smoothly, that we would do this. But don't worry about it. As the summer goes on, we're going to run a couple of events here down at the boathouse, so to get people in and to chat about what we're doing and be able to basically have a couple of nibbles and some drinks and make sure that everyone's still having a great time during the summer. Please, though, do keep hold of your emails and look at the website to make sure you stay on top of when those are going to be released. Fantastic. All right then, well, I have here Dan Pesh, our new, what's your title, Dan?
I'm the president of SailMV.
There you go. But before we talk to Dan, we'd all like to thank Peggy Schweer from the bottom of our hearts for all the effort she's put in over the many, many years she's been involved. So Dan, I'll hand over to you to start with.
All right, well, I would like to thank Peggy for a good handoff. During the time that I started here over 8 years ago, SailMV's had a very large expansion of our scope and become a really integral part of the community in a lot of facets, and we'll go into that a little bit with Andy. But Peggy was key in doing all of those things. Her connection with the community, with the people, because I view us as a people organization, made us grow in a way that was very meaningful. It's really about a mentorship type of organization, giving the children of the island a perspective on making a living from and living with the sea around them. And maintaining maritime heritage has been what Peggy really worked towards. And the handoff to me with giving us a more diverse board with greater depth of knowledge of the community has been invaluable. And we're making some great progress this year. So I want to thank Peggy for that hard work. And I'd ask all of you if you can reach out, because we're not here at the for our normal seafood buffet and auction. If you can reach out, it would be a wonderful thing. Peggy's done a great job in all this time that she's been with the organization. So thank you.
Fantastic. Okay, so we'll move on from that now. And as an organization, we've obviously gone through some really interesting times over the last 16, 18 months. So we're just going to let's just talk about what SailMV did last year, how we managed to weather the storm that was 2020, and then we'll have a little look forward. So from my point of view running the programs, last year we ran a surprisingly successful private lessons.
Very much so.
And we got lots of people on the water, but we also obviously had our fundraiser, which was the first of our virtual seafood buffets and auction. We'd like to thank everyone who got involved with that, obviously.
Yeah, very much so. I think that it was a first-time effort led by Andy, and I think that it was an opportunity for us to speak to some different things that we don't always do at the Seafood Buffet and Auction. But weathering that time frame, those folks who helped us out, all of you who participated, it made us, it helped us get through what was a very tough year. And we're persisting with some of that, and we look forward to next year being in a much more personal environment. But our ability to pivot, maintain our core functions at the high school, and teaching sailing individually during the time frame, I think was very rewarding. But we also maintained the sailing team. We did have all of our other programs running, and we continue to do that this year even more fully. So your help was great in keeping us going.
So when we think about 2020, and you're obviously in a position in which you see the like a 50,000 foot view of what was happening on the island. I mean, your take on how we as a community managed to to muddle our way through 2020?
Yeah, I think that when I think about being at the hospital and how we started with all of this and all of the changes that all of us as Islanders had to go through, trying to be prepared for something that may or may not come. The fact that our surge or increase in cases didn't happen until months after other areas in Massachusetts had theirs, and then having to roll out the vaccination. Being a very small hospital, we were thankful the community came together and supported a lot of these initiatives and have been good players in what's been a very difficult time frame. And that brings us to now where we're all reopening. We got a quick change in the governor's order and we're doing different things, but it really hasn't changed what our core programs are doing, only what we're doing insofar as fundraising. And so I'm happy to say that right now we do have a very full program. We've had good response from the community. And we've always been outside and doing things. It's a very safe and reasonable time frame to be here and doing, continuing to sail and that. So again, I think the community and the response, it's been always change, and even now. So.
Okay, so it's one of those things that highlighted to me, obviously being relatively new to the island, you come to a location like this and community is everything.
Yes.
And when the going gets tough, the tough get going, as they say. And for the island, it seemed that the community, especially an organisation like us, which is, I would suggest, a keystone organisation. We educate, we infuse, we mentor. For us to manage to be able to continue to run and offer what we could was absolutely outstanding. And to thank the community as a whole for supporting us by coming to us, by taking part in what we were doing,
Yes.
and members of our sailing team that we've supported through years to come and work for us was absolutely outstanding. So putting 2021 away and never talking about it ever again, your view on the Sail MV that you want to leave behind for the person taking over from you. Any changes or any peshisms we're going to be seeing coming out?
Well, I think the direction that we want to go in is to be more inclusive for the island community, especially now. We had begun before the pandemic to work with the disabled to get them out on the water. But as a corollary of that, there are a lot of communities that we don't reach that I think that working on the water, our mentorship type of organization would be beneficial to. As I started out with, I know many kids who their career path, their life path changed because of their involvement with Sail MV. And so we want to make sure that everybody has that opportunity. We've always been welcoming to everybody that comes to our door, but we have to actually go out and tell people we're here and make sure that they come to our door. And we haven't done that. And so as I look forward, I'd like to fully develop the sailing program for the disabled, which I know is it's near to you, near and dear to your heart. But I'd also like to make sure that we're always here for those students and realize that this is a good time. The green economy, blue economy are really coming to the fore. People can be here on the island and make a living working in this, in the marine environment. And we want to make sure that even if they don't, that it's an enriching part of their lives. So I think that it's an extension of what Peggy was working on, and I think we can be better at what we do, and we really just want to focus on the quality, safety, and outcomes of our programs for all Islanders.
Awesome. And I think I'm always interested in this whenever we get new board members with us, or actually new students or parents, whatever, is why are they becoming involved in sailing? Why do they come down the hill to the boathouse? Why do they go on the water and go and get wet and all these other kind of things? So I'd like to dive into why did you get involved in Sail MV? And why is Sail MV so, you give huge amounts of time to Sail MV, and you have for years and years. Why?
Well, so I learned to sail here on the island in one of the ponds on a boat that my brother got through mailing in cigarette package ends, and literally. And
that sounds like an interesting story.
We won't go there. But what's more, that has I've always been rooted in sailing and sailing here on the island. And there are a lot of people on the island who pushed me towards some of the career paths I have. But even more so, my daughter worked at Sail MV and taught sailing here. And when she'd lost some of her direction, as well supported as she was, she got direction through Sail MV, and she remains a lifelong sailor. She remains somebody who's bound to that. Some of the mentors pushed her towards a technical education, and she's an engineer, and she works on and around the water as well. And it is really important, even for kids who have all of the advantages and privilege, even they need mentorship. And you can imagine, if I can see that for my kids, I have seen many participants in the program move on who were not thinking they'd go to college, not thinking that they'd have a discipline, develop that because of the mentorship in this program. And even if we make the difference in one life, it's valuable to me, and I see that, and it's much more than one. Mm-hmm. And that's why I really give all my heart to this organization, because I think it makes a difference every day. So.
It's fascinating. You mentioned before the blue economies. We'll talk about our partnerships in a second, but it's the ability to give the youth of the island options. Life is all about options, isn't it? If you only have one option, then there's only one way you're going. But if you can turn left and right, it gives you all of a sudden there's a plethora of different options open to you. And I think it's Sail MV's real strength is opening everyone's eyes, but especially the youth on the island, to the options available, be them practical out on the water here, or be it in the classroom. And whether or not they take it up and they go off like your daughter going to do engineering via the sea, or if they just poddle around and go fishing and drive a whaler, it doesn't matter. It's that ability to look at the options and be able to make a decision and have those the options that they can do. Okay, cool. So we talked about partnerships, and we have we have lots and lots and lots of partnerships going on. I mean, we basically have two different groups of partnerships. We have our kind of event and fundraising kind of partners, people like Tilton Tents, who've always supported us, and actually we'd like to thank them because they always send down a tent for our operation here. People like Our Market, Bad Martha's, providing us for free of charge for the things, so that people who come to our events can have a great time and also support. But the other partnerships I'd like to, and you've already alluded to them, is the partnerships that go in through our programs. So we have, the shipyard, so MV Shipyard, Phil and James support us in a plethora of different ways. We have them, I mean, the program would not be able to run without them. No. With all the support they give there. And then obviously we have the Vineyard Cup, which goes on there. I mean, your take on the support they've given us for the Vineyard Cup over the last 3 years?
Well, it's the same kind of thing. They support us not only in the fundraising piece, but they support us through the Vineyard Cup. I know that we've had many of our events at their facility, and they've supported that wholeheartedly. But they also support us, when we have participants coming, making sure that they have, places to moor their boats and those kinds of things. But I think the biggest thing is that they welcome people, that is the kids who have done the vocational training. They are a huge resource to help us, look at how the vocational program works, having kids work there, and mentors for those kids. And so they are a full partner on all levels, and we can't thank them enough. Yeah,
I mean, I think that the amazing thing is when you look at the tight-knit marine industry that we have here, the number of alums, either from the sailing program or the high school sailing or the maritime studies class, that go and work for them for a little while, and another partner, G&B, of course.
Correct.
Who they pick them up, we educate them, and they go and do their thing.
Right.
And that's, I think that's hidden a little bit. I think I'm not sure people know the partnerships we have with them, and obviously that needs a base to run from. So we have our partners at the school and the maritime studies class. I mean, as you've already alluded to, your daughter, was rudderless for a little bit and needed and the mentorship given by the sailing or whoever that may have been. But how important do you think continued marine education is to the youth of this island via our maritime studies class?
I think it's eye-opening for them that there are all these possibilities. So even amongst kids who I know were planning on college, the idea that they could be a a marine architect or have engineering, that involves something that they love. So, the community that we build here and the idea that they see other people around them being successful and going on and doing things that they'd like to do, that's probably the biggest thing. Like when I think back to the videos that John Wilson and others put together for us and helped us with, I think of some of the lines, and I just remember one young woman saying, I come down here to find my community. And so the things that we do are just introducing them to people with like-minded pursuit, and they feel supported and they feel like they could be successful, which is really, that's what mentorship is about, that yes, I know I can do this. And so I think it's critical that we have this ongoing support. Like I said, even if they're not going to go into the maritime industry, the lessons they learned here on the water about team building, how they communicate with people when things are going rather ruggedly, how you make things work is a big deal. So I think it's absolutely imperative.
I always state that sailing teaches you how to get yourself out of the situations that you put yourself into.
This is true.
Like, the number of times I put myself in trouble just because I'm being an idiot on the water is just outrageous. But then, like, we've obviously worked along with the board and myself and the school, and previously Brock and Kimberly Almer, in developing a maritime studies class that is far-reaching with, introduction to navigation, be it digital, chart, or celestial. We don't get up in the middle of the night and go and check the moon, but those kind of things, and then leading into the basic general deck safety kind of protocol. But now we've started to move on through the need. We felt that the need for a little bit more academic rigor, so the naval architecture and lines drawings and those kind of things. And it was funny, we were talking to G&B, and I was just picking their brains, as you do, because they're rather good at it. He said, well, if you've got a student who knows what this is, send him my way. We'll give him a job. So I think we continue to develop that and make sure that we offer as much as we possibly can to our students. And again, we have an agreement with G&B and the shipyard to be allowed to do some small work placements with our seniors, which,
it's invaluable.
Yeah, it gives them that. And actually, again, we always think about, as you mentioned, you might not be going into the maritime community, but those little resume sections, those little nuggets of good stuff that go onto your resume by working in places or doing a course that pushes you in a slightly different way is always fantastic.
Yeah, and I think that the concepts introduced in a pursuit for that they enjoy, such as sailing, the idea that it actually has basis in math and other things, and that math can contribute to something that they like. Those kinds of lessons, I think, are really, really important as well.
Okay, cool. And we've just, when we think about our maritime studies class, we also deal with Monsieur Packer and all the things that he's done for us over the years. And he's been, one of our most starstruck event supporters, isn't he?
Correct.
And the reason we're here this evening is to talk about and to try and raise awareness that support is still needed. So if you're out there and you're sitting and you're listening to Dan and I witter away on the beach here, and you think these are the things that I would really love to be involved in, we'd really just, any kind of donation you could possibly help out with would be greatly received. Anything from 10 to whatever.
We are an organization that has made most of our way on very small donations, and we certainly have a cadre of larger donors, but any donation is welcome. And we also welcome your time and energy, so we certainly would love anybody to get in touch with John or Andy about opportunities to work with us at SailMV. It's a lot of fun being on the water and doing things, and certainly, like I said, when we look forward to next year being back in person, I think our event, the Seafood Buffet and Auction down on the waterfront on Mr. Packer's property with all the wooden boats surrounding us, we really are looking forward to that. And so your donations are going to keep us there, so that we're going to have the ability to have our full programs and a big summer next summer.
With that in mind, we are running, as Dan has already alluded to, a full program this year. We've had to reduce our numbers very slightly due to, staff restrictions, and then proceed what we kind of had to plan for. We thought COVID restrictions would be, but we're nearly at the numbers that we had in 2019. So we are really pushing it, and We've introduced windsurfing, beginner windsurfing, as a free to island students course, and of course messing around in boats, minnow and scup have always been free to our island students. I mean, whenever I talk to people, certainly I've got a couple of young kids, and whenever I talk to parents, they're like, wow, SailMV's free. I mean, that's a big thing that people need to be aware of.
Right, and I think that it's important to understand that when we introduce these programs, while we get the support of all these island organizations, we count on you to provide that support. So even though the high school does give us support to run the high school sailing team, that by and large that's on us at SailMV to support that, and we love to do it. Again, it's integral to our mission, but it takes a lot of money and effort, and we have a really good sailing team too. There's something to be proud of year in, year out. And we also like to encourage the fact that we have the 7th and 8th graders coming in as kind of our farm team. So it's a big program, and it takes a lot of time and effort.
So when we're thinking about impact and what we've done, we've got some pieces for alumni who've been through our programs, and they want to tell you about how important SailMV was to them.
I'm going to school for naval architecture and marine engineering, and I guess all of my growing up on the island and what I've experienced and all those experiences have kind of guided me towards this career path.
I always loved sailing, and it's being a member of the team both in high school and college changed my life for sure. Lifelong friends, great experiences. But then I went on to study oceanography, and I have a master's degree in oceanography. So SailMV and learning to sail and being a part of a sailing community influenced my career as well.
Any period that I spent too long away from the water racing has not been a good period after long enough. It's always something that I've had to return to. It's like coming home. And so being on the island now and working at a boatyard with my brother and being able to kite and windsurf and sail regularly is coming home, and it's a home that exists all over the world, and it's a language that exists all over the world.
I can say, sure, I'm from Martha's Vineyard, but people don't really know what that actually means. And having grown up here, it's a very special position, unique position to be in. And being on the water and specifically sailing has changed me and the trajectory of my life for forever.
The community of sailors here was excellent. They really influenced me to pursue a career in that industry at sea. A lot of the people, Andrew Burr and Brock Callan, great influences, and really helped me realize that was something I wanted to do and spend time on the water and make it part of my life. So yeah, being at SailMV really helped steer me in that direction, a positive direction.
I choose to go out on the water every day because even in those horrible days, because I'm always learning something, I'm always surrounded by people who want to get better, I'm always surrounded by motivation, and being the competitive person that I am, that drives me, that makes me want to go that extra step and be a better sailor and a better person.
Probably just being prepared. Something as small as bringing an extra roll of electrical tape with you when you're out in a 420 can make all the difference when your pins are falling out. So just be prepared for any situation and try to take that into real life. And a little bit of problem solving, what did they say? Duct tape saved Apollo 11. Electrical tape saved a lot of pins in my 420s.
A part of that connection to the ocean is a resilience, ability to take whatever throws at you and make the best of a situation. And SailMV absolutely helps promote that resilience in the community.
Well, I hope you all agree that there's some remarkable stories of what SailMV's done for these people, these students, and it's just so wonderful to see our students going on and taking those options that we've given them and really running with it. Okay, well, we're going to start wrapping up now, but before we finish, SailMV for a long time has always had a big award, which is the Cronkite Award, and this year we're going to be awarding it to Alison Shaw. Do you have any comments on what Alison's done for the island and for sailing as a whole over the last few years?
Well, certainly, her ability to record and give us images of not only boats being built and tell the story there. But boats on the water, our marine environment has been, absolutely remarkable. And I think that we underestimate the contribution of that. But when I think about a lot of things with regard to Gannon and Benjamin, I think of the cover of their book, and it is a striking thing, and it's one of those things that brings peace. You think about some of her images. She does it so well, and her contribution can't be understated. She is part of the island, she's part of our culture, and we're thankful to be able to give her this award and honor that contribution.
I was an admirer, as I've looked back through history, through photographs and stories, of your mother's work, Gretchen Van Tassel Shaw. She was taking spectacular photographs, and thank God she was, of all these waterfronts in the 40s and 50s, in the 30s as well?
Mostly mid-40s,
right.
Mid to late 40s.
There are just these spectacular records of these places before storms knocked them down or some of the transmogrifications occurred. Tell me a little bit about her as a photographer, about her experiences out on the water, what you learned from her. I just love the fact that there's this continuity.
Yeah, she was a working photographer sort of in the mid-40s, and as with many women of her age and that time, once she got married, she was no longer a working photographer. She was a full-time housewife and mom. But she did a couple of projects specifically on the Vineyard at about around that time. Photo essays, really. And interestingly, one was sort of a week in the life of the Vineyard Gazette.
Oh,
which
I remember
was
that.
Wonderful. Everything from editorial conferences to the back shop, the front shop, Mr. Huff in his office at home and at work, and Mrs. Huff. But the other one that really relates to what we're talking about now is she photographed the launching of Manuel Schwartz Roberts' last catboat. And the person buying that boat, I think, had asked Manuel. Manuel's nickname was the Old Sculpin.
Right.
So he asked permission to name the boat the Old Sculpin. And that's just a wonderful record of views of the boat being launched. And also, I've had such an involvement with Old Sculpin Gallery over the years. And Manuel, when he stopped boat building, he actually gave that property. I mean, it was in pretty severe disrepair, but he gave it to the local artists as a place to show their work. So it's all kind of full circle stuff.
Right. She was a sailor?
Yeah, my mom actually, she crewed for Virginia, Weston, Bessie.
The greats.
Yes, absolutely. So my mom was a sailor, and also my family, we were all sailors. I raced a Jet 14 on the Chesapeake Bay. We had a 38-foot, really old school fiberglass yawl, lots of bright work, heavy traditional lines and everything, and really sort of spent my week, when we're in the Vineyard, I spent my weekends on the water in sailboats. And that led up to moving to the island. Sort of one of the ironies of my life is I moved to an island, and my life is not about boats anymore. I mean, you have to have money and time to be a sailor,
Right.
And I was working, initially minimum wage for the Gazette, inserting, collating papers. It just wasn't, and I was working 70-hour weeks for the Gazette. So I didn't have money and I didn't have time. So my enjoyment, I have such fond memories of being on the water a lot. And I feel lucky to still be in that environment and to have that be my primary subject matter.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, you just you had to step off the boat and then watch other people taking their leisure out on it. And have you ever owned a boat, any kind of a boat here at all?
Oh, that's a great question. I bought a boat with my friend Karen Huff many, many years ago. It was a Sunfish, rather modest little purchase, and she had a place to keep it on Edgartown Harbor. And 2 years after this purchase, I looked at her and said, I'm not sure if I've been out, maybe I went once, but I said, it's bad enough not having time or whatever to use it, but it's worse feeling guilty
Yeah.
for not doing it. So I couldn't handle the guilt. We sold the boat. That was the end of it.
Yeah.
But St. Martha's Vineyard, actually, at one point, they did this Thursday evening women's sail where we went down to the lagoon and took one of the boats out and took turns at the helm, and it's kind of like riding a bike.
Comes right back.
And plus, I wanted to go fast and heel, and they would have to sort of tame me back a little bit. I mean, I just was like, wow, I remember this feeling. So I would get my, 7 minutes, with the tiller in hand and the main sheet, just loving every minute of it.
I've been thinking about this whole award and when I first heard about it and all the rest, and I had just one thought just crossed my mind. And the first question that I had was, I mean, what did you do, really? Did you give him you gave him a 20? Something, I mean, that's the only way I could have got. You knew Walter Cronkite well. I knew him slightly, but as soon as I heard this, I thought to myself, well, what would Walter say? And Walter would say something like, well, I can't believe that Allison has won this award. I mean, if Allison Shaw can win it, then anybody can win it. And that's the way it is. Monday, June 20. No, I mean, look, my question to Sail MV is, what took you guys so long? It's Shaw!
And easy answer to why I won the award. That's because my uncle Tom Worth sold Walter his Green Hollow house.
Of course.
So of course.
There we go.
He owed me one, probably for a couple $100,000, so really. And on top of that, I happened to be probably in my 20s, but Walter Cronkite's house sitter for 3 winters.
Well, this explains
I lived there.
Explains the whole thing.
Great care of his house. He didn't have a working television. I always thought that was sort of amusing, but
yeah.
So that's why I'm
there
here.
It is. Listen, congratulations.
Thank you.
That's wonderful.
Thank
It
you.
is a wonderful development. My memories of working with you go right back to the beginning of the time when the Gazette went from the old hot lead press to the electronic presses and the electronic processes they use today. And I remember the first time I started catching pages off the press as it came out and seeing these extraordinary photographs that you were taking. And I couldn't believe, and to this day I don't really understand how it's possible that those pictures looked so vivid on a newspaper page. Just tell me, how did that work? Because I wasn't seeing it happen in any other newspapers that there were.
Well, one thing is that we weren't very ecologically conscious in those days, and they used what was called oil-based. It wasn't water-based inks. So, and I knew I liked a lot of contrast in my work. So, and I knew that on a press, if you can't screw up opening up the black channel, and you can't screw up a black, and you can't screw up a white, and if you don't have too many grays in between, like you would have in the zone system, that image is going to have impact. So my pictures consisted of a lot of black and a lot of white, and the paper stock was really white. And yes, presses went in April. I arrived in June.
My feeling about your work always, and then when I'm looking around here at the gallery and all the rest of it, is that it was key to your development, and it's still actually true in these pictures today, that you started out as a storyteller, as a photographer. You were being sent out on these assignments, going to the hospital to cover doctors' work and going to Camp Jabberwocky and watching these kids dare to do things they had never done before. Caregivers giving their heart and soul to this. And I believe that in your stories to this day, what you're trying to do, you can tell me if I'm wrong, and it'll only be before thousands of people, so don't mind that. But then when you look at these pictures, what you're doing is trying not just to capture a moment, but to tell a story of this place so that anyone who looks at these pictures goes, I've seen that. I've seen that moment. Now if I buy that picture, I don't have to describe what it looks like at the fishing pier at 6 o'clock in the morning on a foggy day. I'm wondering if you still think about consciously drawing lessons from your time for 30 years as a photojournalist.
Well, and with the Gazette, I was usually assigned to something if it was a story. And if not, it was just always I was telling the story of the Vineyard. I always had my camera with me. So the pictures that ended up on the front page or on the editorial page didn't come from an assignment per se. It came from really assigning myself to cover the vineyard and the natural world, which I found so compelling. And what I'm doing today, I guess it's still telling stories, but it's more picking. I think the longer you do something, you need to grow and change and evolve, and to keep the edge and keep it exciting and keep inspired by, you know, there are 100 square miles here, and that's my beat. I can't just go to, you know, from Massachusetts to Rhode Island by crossing a border to find more subject matter. So it's a matter of having the island stay alive for me for so many years. I started with the Gazette in 1975. And to dig deep, sort of one subject at a time, whether they be, one of my earliest series was Details in Artist Studios, where I would go from studio to studio and do these details. And my current work, it's mostly about these boat hulls, which I'm having so much fun doing. And one of my favorites is actually Popper from Gannon and Benjamin. Two of my other favorites are from Bob Douglas's vast collection of boats, but of doing individual boat hulls from different angles, just honoring them. And then I become obsessed with whatever the project is, and that's my current obsession.
Do you think, I mean, you could go to you could go to Wickford, Rhode Island, you could go to other coastal communities and see all sorts of evidence of people being very creative. Is there a difference here on the Vineyard in the nature, the breadth, the depth of creativity in people? Do you, I mean, I know comparisons are odious in a way, but is there a quality? I mean, I suppose the way to ask the question is, why stay here and do this just here when there are other places and whatnot? What is it that that might add to the inspiration of the creative person that you were trying to record?
So the most important thing, I think, is, again, being trapped on this island. It forces you to go deep rather than just go further afield. So, which forces you to see the island in different ways, and also just for my own entertainment. And I think other creative people here, I'm pretty convinced there are more galleries, for example, here than, you know, per size of the population than almost any other place in the country. And certainly we know incredibly talented musicians and writers, and I think they, you know, the beauty and the variety of the Vineyard combined with having a little bit of being alone to do your creative work and having the space to do it, and having the support, the incredibly supportive community. I couldn't be, if I were in New Jersey and trying to sell pictures of boats, I would not be making my living at this, you know? I would not be able to do what I'm doing today.
But is that because the population is here and is, in effect, as you say, trapped or surrounded by a border of water? Or is there something in the population that says, you know what, we ought to be, as the bumper stickers have it, buying local? I'm interested in your take on that.
I mean, I think, you know, I think Chris, the granary, he's the one that produced that bumper sticker, Buy Art.
Yep.
And it's, I mean, it's great. Year-round people sometimes come in and buy things, and that's wonderful. But we're so lucky as artists to be supported by the summer population here. Really, really lucky. And again, that wouldn't happen for many of us if we lived somewhere else.
How many books have you put out so far?
20.
20, of which you and I have done 4.
A bunch,
Yeah.
right?
So the first Vineyard Gazette reader, which didn't involve, but then Morning Glory, Schooner, Chappie Ferry. Any others? I can't even remember. It's been over 20. Let's count. Well, in any event, the experience of working with you, you know what the biggest surprise was?
What?
We hardly ever saw each other. When I was doing my research and you were doing yours, so maybe you can take us through, let's just take one, Sale Martha's Vineyard, Schooner. How that came to be, that idea that was engendered by you. You came to me with that whole business.
So that actually came out of Bill Graham in the mid-90s, 1995. Got in touch with me about photographing. Gannon and Benjamin were going to build a 24-foot day sailor for him. And he asked me if I would photograph the building of his boat. And I had one question back to him. This is kind of obnoxious, but I said, do you want it like documented, or can I just do my thing? Because at that point, I wasn't that familiar with Gannon and Benjamin. I love boats, but I wasn't, a regular there. And he said, no, just do your thing. So it was like getting this commission where I got to just go off and be a little more creative with it. And during that 6-month period, I fell in love with the boatyard. I fell in love with the process. I fell in love with, Nat and Ross and what they had created, and the visuals, the technical part of it, everything. So not long after that, I remember being at lunch with Dan Adams and was invited to lunch at Nat at Black Dog Cafe because I was going to do the big ask. So Bill Graham's I got paid, decent money for. And with this schooner project, I asked basically permission to follow it and photograph it.
This is going to be the building of the largest
schooner on the Vineyard since Abraham Lincoln was president.
Exactly right. Yep.
So, and he said, great, because, it wasn't going to cost him anything. There was no downside to it. So when and I was hooked at that point on boat building and Gannon and Benjamin and the whole scene. And I thought, I want to turn this into more than just a bunch of pictures. I want it to be a book. And there's only one person who could write it. And
he wasn't available.
I reached out to you. And this is, again, I have no money for you. I have no promises. I have no nothing. This is a labor of love. And you said yes.
Yep.
And I spent a lot of time there, once a week or so, going early, trying to get that early morning light that came in through the big open doors of Mugwump, and photographed for the next couple of years.
Yeah.
And we chased all over the country also.
We did.
I did the spars in Port Townsend. I did the sails in the Eastern Shore of Maryland.
Yep.
I mean, all over the place.
Yep.
Little bits and pieces of the schooner. It was a great project. And then the launch was 2001. And then the book, which we thought would be a piece of cake and everybody would love it, we'd find a publisher, was another 10 years later that Vineyard Stories, John Walter and Jan Pogue
Took a chance.
Took a chance.
Wow.
And again, there was no money on the table.
Nope.
It was like once we cover for them, it was also a labor of love. And once they covered their expenses, we've got a couple bucks. We'd be rolling in
We'd be
right?
rolling in, exactly.
And I was shooting transparency film, so it was probably, 500 rolls of film. And
that was the amazing part of it to me, was that we 9 years had passed between the finishing the project and them deciding they wanted to do it. And what I'd forgotten was more than what I ever learned. And I knew that I was going to have to go back over all of my notes. My first fear was that my old Word documents would have dissolved because I went from a PC to a Mac. And so I was going through document after document. And in your case, I loved this, was Jan Pogue saying, I'm saying to her, I need to go back and look at all of these pictures again. I need to find out what happened. I need to remind myself. She goes, well, she'll just send you digital files. And I said, Jan, Allison Shaw, 2001. And looking at all of those contact sheets and reminding myself about what it was, and it was just epic, just epic. And Wooden Boat said, nobody in the world has photographed a project like this the way you have. It's an absolutely unique take. And I love the fact that you're still photographing boat hulls at Gannon and Benjamin.
Right.
20 years later. Yikes. We were talking.
But from a whole different perspective. I couldn't do it the same way again. Nope. And actually, I also photographed one other boat being built there. Because I tend to, once every couple of weeks, month, I check in just to see what's happening and see what's up. And I'll never forget, I don't even remember what the date was, but I'm walking in, and they were lofting on the floor of, the shop in the harbor. I said, what are you guys building? And they said, a whale boat. I was like, oh my God, a whale boat? You're kidding. So they had, and this was brilliant on the part of Mystic, of all of those individual whale boats that chase the whales. They went to the best known wooden boat building places, mostly in New England, but further afield than that, and let them have the honor of building one of the boats. But again, didn't give them any money to build the boat.
This is for the Charles W. Morgan.
Charles W. Morgan.
They sent that wonderful whaling ship.
And that was the last boat. Maybe Baby was Bill Graham's, and then Rebecca was a schooner, and then the whaleboat for the Charles W. Morgan, of seeing it through from lofting to launch.
Extraordinary. Well, I think that this award is, personally speaking, I don't know anybody who's earned anything more by way of official recognition personally than you have for this. I'm so proud. And like I said, what took you guys so long?
Well, that's very sweet, because it came at, Peggy Schweer reached out to me a year ago. This sort of got postponed a little bit. I was like, you're kidding. Like, wow. I got all flushed, teary-eyed, and, you know, because I mean, I'm passionate about the island's coastline, and I'm passionate about boats, and grew up on boats, and to have that sort of come around full circle and be acknowledged, I'm thrilled. And I'm thrilled to be sitting here with you.
Well, that's very kind of you, but I'll tell
colleague.
you that if he was still with us, it'd be Walter sitting here. So, anyway.
Well, we're back from that, and I think you'll all agree that Alison really is a fantastic recipient for this.
Absolutely.
Okay, we're coming towards the end of this evening, and we're about to wrap up, but I think, Dan, have you got any last words?
I just want to thank everybody for their support, and you know, come out and see what we're all about. We are a people organization. We'd love to have your involvement. So thank you.
Thanks, Dan. I really appreciate you spending the time coming to talk to us. Well, guys, that's about it. As I said last year, I hope you stay safe. I look forward to seeing you all on the water, and don't forget, there's only one vineyard, there's only one sea, and there really is only one sail MP. Thank you very much, and good night.